Well, the United States government is spending at least $60 million per week to care for the surge of unaccompanied migrant children at our borders. According to reports, the funding totals to more than $3 billion per year and is being used by the Department of Health and Human Services to care for the more than 16,000 migrant children being held in their facilities. The HHS has nearly 8,000 beds, which are currently all filled. The care for a single child in an HHS facility costs approximately $290 per day. In the wake of overflowing HHS facilities, the Biden administration has set up 10 additional facilities, but the cost of housing the children in these facilities is significantly higher than housing them in other centers. The emergency overflow facilities consist of 16,000 additional beds, and the child care costs $775 per child per day. With me now to discuss all of this is the co-chair of the House Border Security Caucus, representing Texas's 36th congressional district, Congressman Brian Babin. Welcome back.
Thank you, Ms. Kara. Great to be with you again.
Great. Thank you so much. So $60 million per week is a staggering figure. And it looks like this crisis at the border isn't going to be resolved by the Biden administration anytime soon. Do you think that this figure is really only going to get higher at this point?
I know it's going to get higher. I was down there a little over a week ago, and incredibly, it's much, much worse now, and it was horrible then. We went into the facility at Donna, run by the CBP. It's a facility for, that is supposed to have a capacity of 250 UACs, or unaccompanied children. And quite frankly, there were 5,700 kids packed into there like sardines. And there's a COVID outbreak. It is incredible what's going on there. And every bit of this is traceable to the foolish decisions by President Biden at running back and repealing the great policies of the Trump administration.
So here we're hearing about $60 million a week. It reminds me of robbing Peter to pay Paul, for example, because, the money that we're talking about, the $60 million, it doesn't even figure in FEMA and some other agencies and the money that they're spending as well on this crisis. And at the same time, there's an infrastructure package, over $2 trillion there, that includes tax hikes on companies, which, of course, will hit Americans. So are Americans going to be forced to pay for all of this with higher taxes and a higher cost of living?
Absolutely. And like you just said, this 60 million per week, that doesn't even include, CBP, FEMA, and these other agencies. So it's going to be a whopping, staggering figure that the American taxpayer is going to have to pony up. And I would ask this question, what about our own kids? What about our veterans? What about the homeless Americans? We're taking care of these people and opening our borders up, and my heart goes out to them. Don't get me wrong. Being down there to see little kids, being released in the desert by their guardians, their coyotes, their parents, whoever in the heck is doing it, they ought to be prosecuted. And wandering around, we saw one. We've all seen the one of the two kids, 3 and 4, maybe 5-year-old kids, dumped over a 14-foot fence. And then we saw one this morning, a little boy wandering around in the desert aimlessly. And thank God that our Border Patrol have rescued these people. And it's just an absolute disaster. And I'll tell you this, the President of the United States must act and save these migrants and save our pocketbooks and take care of America first. And his Vice President, Kamala Harris, who laughed when asked when she was coming to the border, is nowhere to be found. She's AWOL. And I think the lady needs to come down and see the border for herself. She's the border czar. Let's get some information and start taking care of this unmitigated disaster.
Also, the leader of the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, she hasn't visited either, but she this week was saying that we're on the right track under Biden when it comes to what we're seeing right now at the border. Do you think there's anything going to be done legislatively to fix the crisis, or at least to propose some solutions, when we have the leader of the lower chamber saying everything looks fine to me?
Well, all I can say is she hadn't been down there. And Ms. Pelosi needs to come down and see for herself. I'm not holding my breath that there will be any legislative solution here except to basically open the borders up and codify. In other words, put into law all of these harebrained schemes to bankrupt America and just let anybody around the world come into into our great country, and we simply cannot afford it. We're catching people. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had people from special interest countries and who are on the terrorist watch list and also the no-fly list. They're not just coming from Central America and Mexico. They're coming from well over 100 nations around the world. And they don't all have great, kind feelings towards Americans.
And since your district is in Texas, talk to me a little bit about how this border issue, this border crisis, has specifically affected your constituents in your district.
Well, these people are being released into our country, and many of them are COVID positive. We know that. We're supposed to still continue to be locked down, wearing masks, socially distancing. And Dr. Fauci keeps reiterating how important it is. We're not out of the woods yet on COVID, and yet here we are releasing these people. So that impacts us in a great way. Plus, the taxpayers of the great state of Texas, we have to educate these kids that are coming in here. We have to medicate them. We have to, unfortunately, have to incarcerate some of them because many of these are not vetted, and they're coming in and they're members of gangs like MS-13, and it is just impossible to even comprehend what they want unless you look at it from a standpoint. They want open borders. The Democrats want these people with their HR 1 bill. They want these people to come in and vote and get on as much, become as dependent on government handouts as possible. This is their strategy. There's no question in my mind. Everybody else is going to have to make it up because they certainly do not, they don't admit that. But hey, I don't see any other way around it.
And talking about this safety issue before I let you go tonight as well, as we're talking about this, it's truly a manufactured crisis by the Biden administration. It didn't have to be this way. You know, as you were mentioning earlier, with all the policies President Trump had put into place being repealed back, and now we're seeing the wave come in. So many Americans are feeling unsafe. I mean, for the past year, they've seen their cities burn, their police, you know, with their hands behind their back in many ways. And like we were saying, with the border now wide open, and with all of this going on, Biden comes out just yesterday and announces a whole slew of executive orders concerning gun control. Is that what we need to really even be focusing on right now? Taking away guns and restricting access to our Second Amendment God-given rights for law-abiding citizens, and basically, you know, giving all this money and all this freedom and ability for people to come in and break our laws?
Kara, it's incredible to think we saw for a year the violence by the Marxist left of the Democratic Party, and Americans were justifiably apprehensive. They were scared. They saw whole cities taken over, burned, looted. We saw murders. We saw Democrat DAs that didn't even prosecute. And so absolutely, Americans went out and bought guns and ammunition at record rates, and they want to protect themselves. Gun control doesn't work, Democrats. We know if it worked, then Chicago and Washington, D.C. and a lot of these Democrat-controlled cities would have the safest streets in the world, and yet they're the most dangerous. We know that DAs and Democrat policies do not work. We need to enforce the gun laws that we already have, which they're not doing, instead of taking law-abiding citizens who want to protect themselves from these criminals and these terrorists, basically, and radicals, and make sure that they can protect themselves, not violate our Second Amendment rights. So do your job. That's what I would say, Democrats. Do your job, enforce the law at the local level, prosecute these people, and do not take and violate our Second Amendment rights.
Like you're saying, the proof is in the pudding with a lot of these far left cities. We see how they've been run by Democrats for decades, and that's why everyone's trying to get out of Dodge in a lot of these cities and a lot of these states like California and New York. But Congressman, always a pleasure having you on. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Great to be with you as always, Kim.